In today's video, I want to talk to you about controlling the things you can control. And I've got some notes here, so I'm going to stick right to these, because what I want to do is talk to you about things that are out of your control, and then I want to go into things that you can control. And you want to stick around to the end, because I'm going to tell you a story that illustrates this perfectly. So let's have a look at actions that are out of your control. Well, I don't mean, before we start, about controlling other people. I'm talking about the things that you can do for you. And so the first of the actions that is out of your control, basically, are the actions of others. Because sometimes we like to think we can guide people and cajole people and all that sort of thing, but at the end of the day, what other people do is of no concern to you. You don't control them, they control them. And it's no good getting et up and wound up about those things, because you can watch people and see what they're up to and get wound up by it. But I'm talking about not getting wound up by it. The next thing is quite an important one, and it's the outcomes of your efforts. Because we all like to think that by putting all the work in, we will get the results back. But that's not always the case. And you can see that when you hear the story of people who become overnight successes and took 10 and 15 years to get there. So yes, you can put the work in and think that you'll get in there, but it sometimes takes a lot longer than you think it's going to take. And so the outcome of your efforts may not pay for a long while down the road. And you have to remember that from the kickoff. Another thing that you can't control, and it generally talks about, I'm talking about in your mind, and it's the past. Because we can always go over and over and over the past and think about what we could have done that would have made it better, the outcomes we could have changed. But the problem is, with the past, it's gone, and so there's nothing you can do about it. And the same goes for the future. We look forward to things, and I said it in a video a couple of videos back. I'll put a link to it up here somewhere. And when you start to worry about the future, well, you can't control that at all, because it's not here yet. And the only thing that you can control is today. And so thinking about the future and worrying about it is of no consequence whatsoever, and you're just wasting your energy. Here's one that can bite you: the opinions of others. Because especially if you're on social media at the moment, there's a lot of political stuff going on that I personally like to stay right out of the way of. But you can't decide and control other people's opinions. There's a saying that goes something like, a person convinced against his will is of the same opinion still. And that's what I'm talking about. You can't control them, so it's really not worth the effort and not worth the worry. Another thing that you can't control is what happens around you. You might be at work and a situation occurs that you have no control over, that you don't like. But you can't control what always happens unless you're in a position of authority when you can make things happen. But that doesn't end up being a good thing. So this is the one, I think, that hurts most of us. We can't control what other people think of us. And the truth is, there are going to be people who don't like you, just in the same way as there are people that you don't like. And there is nothing whatsoever you can do about it. You could be the nicest person in the world with the best temperament. You go out of your way to help people, and it doesn't matter what you do, there's always going to be someone who doesn't like you. And so there are all those sorts of things that you just can't control. And no matter what you do, nothing's going to help. You can worry about it. It can be on your mind totally. And it's never going to make a difference. So let's have a look at the things you can control. Well, the first thing you can control are your thoughts and your actions. When you're getting yourself down and when you're getting beat up by life, you have to change your perspective and start to think the other way. And then, well, even if the results you want don't come, you'll feel better about yourself. What you give your energy to. Now, I'm not talking about whether you run for anything or not. I'm talking about the things that you want to spend your time on. And that includes you saying no to things you don't want to spend your time on. So there's a lot that you can do about that. Here's another big one, and I've covered this before as well. How you speak to yourself. Because how you speak to yourself has a major impact on your life. And I know a lot of people go, oh, but I don't talk to myself. Yeah, you do. But you do it in here. And the more negative your thinking is, well, that's how it's going to affect you, and things aren't going to go well. But you can reframe your thinking and look at things in a more positive outcome. And you know what? Things do get better. The goals that you set, you can control them. And it doesn't have to be big things. It could be that you decide you're going to walk for 30 minutes every day just to help with your physical fitness. It could be that, like me, you decide to do Spanish, and on Duolingo, you spend 15 minutes on it every day. Those sorts of things you certainly can set, and you can indeed get your life the way you want it. How I spend my free time. Well, I spend my free time talking to you guys, to be honest, and I love it. It's a matter of choice what we do. Some people like to watch sport, some people like to watch the telly, some people like to do sport, some people like to stand in front of a camera and chat to you and come up and share their thoughts. Here's one. How you handle your challenges. Now that is entirely a mindset, because when things around you are going really wrong and you're struggling with things, well, adjusting your mindset, looking at the bigger picture, thinking about things from a different perspective, they can all help. And here's the last one I've got, your boundaries. You get to set them. You can say no to anything you want. If you don't feel comfortable when people are telling you what to do, not necessarily in a job, in the job you've not got much choice, but in your normal life, you can set your boundaries. You know what your limits are. You know what you don't feel comfortable with. And those are the things that I'm talking about. And so it's basically a rundown of the things that you can control and things that you can't. There are obviously more, and it'd be great if you've got comments of things that you'd like to add to this. Bung them down to we'll start again. Bung them down below. Put them in the comments, and we'll have a look at it and probably have a chat about it too. So, I've got this story I want to tell you, and this to me is the perfect example of controlling the things that you can control. I'm going to go back to the year 2012. My wife Debs was 50 in the year 2012, and at the end of the year she started to get a rash on her arm, and it was very itchy and very uncomfortable. And by the beginning of 2013, she'd gone to the doctors, they'd given her tablets, she had loads of tests including thyroid tests, and they all came up negative. And she spent a year going backwards and forwards. And during this time, her hair started falling out. What was thick at one time started to become very straw-like. And each day as she brushed her hair, it would be falling out. She was really worried about this. She was very upset about this, as you would expect a woman to be. In 2014, they'd had enough of the doctors. They wanted to go and get her checked out properly. So she went to see a specialist, and they did a biopsy on her head. And I'm reading this because I want to get it right. And she was diagnosed with a thing called lichen planus and FFP. I'll put that down at the bottom of the screen to explain what it is more. And basically what it does, it destroys your hair follicles, and it's a form of alopecia, but it's so severe that there is scarring, and what it does, once you've lost your hair, it doesn't come back. Now, I remember this period really well. Debs was very upset. She tried to put a brave face on it, but I often caught her crying and looking in the mirror, and she'd say, I'm starting to look like a man. My hair's falling out, I look awful. And all that feminine side of her was rocked. And yet she went on and on. She had to go to work every day, to face people at work, to face the public. And she really got down about it. But just after Christmas, she made a decision that I think has changed her life since then. And what she decided to do, instead of having to look in the mirror at her hair all falling out day after day, she decided to grab the bull by the horns and shave it off. Shave the lot of her hair off. It was going to go anyway, so instead of just waiting for it to happen, she decided to do it. But what she also did was she worked for a charity called the British Heart Foundation, and she decided that she was going to shave her hair off in the shop in front of everybody and do it for the charity and see how much she could raise. Well, at the beginning of 2015, she had her hair shaved off in the shop. The local newspaper came, took photos and did a write-up about it. And the minute she had her hair shaved off, her attitude changed, because no longer was she someone who had no choice over the matter. Her hair was coming out, but she decided, you know what, that's it. Had it shaved off. And that was, she was finally free. She had her own life. She was back in her own life. And that's what she was pleased about. In the years since then, she has had this thing happen. She wears a hat most of the time, especially when she was working in the shop. And people would come up to her and sympathise with her because they thought that she had cancer. And so she had to explain to them that it wasn't cancer and that she had alopecia. But that just made her feel guilty. But over a time, there's a whole world of difference. It's coming up it's over 9 years now since she had it done. Now, she doesn't take any notice of it. She started a new job last year, working in a nursery. And she had her hat on. And on the first day, the kids looked up at her, grabbed her hat, pulled it off. And Deb says to me that that's one of the things that really freed her, because now she doesn't wear the hat to work. All the kids come up, stroke her head every now and again. She's got one little girl that comes up, strokes it and goes, ooh, smooth. And she's a different lady again. It's like she's owning her own life again. And if that's not a good example of taking control of a situation, I don't know what is. I'm extremely proud of her. I can remember watching what she went through. I know how out of control she felt for a long, long time. These days, she's not. Yes, she does wear a wig occasionally. She wears a hat a lot of the time. But she said to me this morning, when she gave me permission to talk about this, that going to the job that she has now, and every day the children take no notice of her being bored. The staff take no notice of her at all. In fact, shouldn't say this, but from what I hear, she's one of the most liked people there. And that's down to her character, which I have to tell you is really strong. And so that's about it from me today. If you've got any comments to make, please leave them down below. And I'll speak to you soon. Ta-da now.